Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Geek Addicts, the pop culture podcast. Yeah, I give up. Anyways, um, one of these days I'll get it right. Change it
Yeah,
up every time, and I just forget what I'm going to say, and then here we are.
yeah, it's all good. No
But,
worries.
yep, but it's been a week since the last time we chatted, and first full week in a while, anyways. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a rough one. Friggin', I think it was like a day or so after we recorded last time, and Francis came down with one of those little like 24, 36-hour colds,
yep,
which was enough on its own to be a force. But then, of course, she passed it on to Cindy and I. And being the old farts that we are, that 24-hour cold lasted all week.
yep,
And we're still feeling the residuals now. So I guess it's my turn to be fighting off the leftovers of a cold.
yeah. It's like there's like a good like span of like 20 episodes of GNC 3DO and Geek Addicts where I just have this persistent cough for like
Yep.
about 3 months. But
Well, luckily it's
it,
not so much a cough for me. It's mostly the congestion is what's getting me.
yeah, that's always the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah, I smashed my thumb pretty good today at work. If you can
Oh,
see the little
jeez.
bruise I got on my nail there.
How'd you do that?
I was sanding something on the lathe and it somehow slipped in between this little crack on the part that I was making, and it just like sucked in the paper and it just like smashed my thumb as it went down.
Jeez.
I didn't even feel it when it happened. Like I was like, God damn it, I dropped my sandpaper. So I went down to go pick it up and I looked at my thumb and it's just purple. And I'm like, that's not good. It didn't
No,
hurt. It didn't hurt at all. That was the weird part. It just kind of happened.
yeah, it's funny when it happens that quick. You don't even notice it at first until you actually see like the evidence of it after the fact.
Well, it's weird as it like heated up. It got like really hot, like feeling. And I was like, that's weird, which I
Mm.
guess was the swelling. And then it just kind of like stayed that way for like an hour. Now it only hurts if I put pressure on it. So
You know, that's something at least. At least it's not that bad.
yeah, it was just kind of like a shock thing. I'm surprised it didn't like bleed, but oh well.
Yeah,
My
could be
daily,
worse.
my weekly injury at work happens all
Oh
the
yeah,
time.
no kidding. But
I
yeah,
think
with
this
like,
is.
huh?
Oh, go on.
Oh, I was just gonna say with like the trip coming up and stuff. I've been like overdosing on vitamin C, trying to squash this cold, just trying to get rid of it
Yeah,
as fast as possible because it's like we're leaving in like just over a week, and I'm not trying to be sick in Florida.
yeah. No, that couldn't be fun at all.
No.
So I think this is the first podcast since we've launched it, but officially now all of the GNC Podcast Network shows are on available on YouTube now.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
So we got both the audio versions, and then we also have. So far, the only one that's 100% confirmed that we're going to be doing this going forward is 3DO, but we're going to have video versions of the podcasts. Um, it's going to be hit or miss with GNC just because Alex doesn't like to be filmed, but
Yeah.
um, I might, if I can recover them, I might do some of the old Geek Addicts as well because I actually found out I can get a bunch of those old broadcasts back.
All right.
So
I'll have to look at some of the footage because my podcasting setup has been so sporadic and random, and I'm always puffing on my vape while we're recording and shit. So
it's all right.
I don't
I
know.
did I did recover the GNC season 3 finale though, so I'm really happy I have that one. So
That would be fun to do at least.
that should be going up at some point. Um, I have I have all of the GNC episodes um from the last 3 anime films on since we switched over to StreamYards.
Hmm.
I have all the 3DOs from when since we got back, and then I have almost every Geek Addicts except for the first one, which is a little depressing because the first one was so chaotic.
I know.
Just how long we went on Dragon Ball, but
No, that would have been fun.
unfortunately, unfortunately, that one's video is there was no video actually. We did that on Discord. Now that I think about it,
Oh yeah, that's right.
the only one we did because I had to edit out a toilet flush.
Wait,
It was great.
did you edit that one out, or am I thinking of the fruits baskets one?
So it's still in the fruit baskets one because that was on Zencaster and
Yeah,
I didn't feel like editing it out.
that's fair.
Uh, yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Which actually, on that subject, my wife started watching that, and
oh
she
really?
likes it. She likes it a lot. Yeah,
It's a good show.
yeah. I think
Very good.
she just recently got to the part where Ayame is introduced,
Ah, yes.
and she's just starting to realize how like perverted all these guys are.
He's one of the worst ones.
Oh, for sure. But like, I don't know, she I don't know, she was mentioning like the other day when she was watching one of the episodes, and it was one of the ones where the dog guy, I forget it,
Shigeru.
yeah, that guy. It was something like he was like acting like he was gonna do a favor, like dropping something off of the school or whatever. But then as he's walking away, he's like, "High school girls, high school girls."
Yep.
Like,
The best part is too that's John Bugmeyer, and he does such a great job with that role.
oh yeah, he's always a treat no matter what he's doing. It's super
Him and
funny.
him and Ayame together are like the best duo.
Yeah, for sure.
Plus Hattori, who just is there by association. But
Oh yeah, and what's Hatsuharu, the
oh
cow
yeah,
guy.
Hatsuharu.
That one was extra fun for us because that's the the Chinese zodiac for our daughter.
Oh yeah,
Where like the whole like the light and dark side, like that just fits her so perfectly. So that was really
nice,
funny.
nice. Yeah, that's a great show. I got to rewatch it at some point, but I also
Yeah,
have too many shows on deck right now. So
I feel you. It's been coming up on a year since I watched it for the first time. So I don't know. I've been feeling like I should rewatch it just to kind of refresh myself.
hmm, no, it's worth it. I got to read the manga for it. That's something I've been meaning to do for a while now. Like give it a full on read because there is a lot of stuff they cut out for time, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of anime and manga, our topic for this week is actually we're doing another retrospective, and
Yes.
this one is for a pretty significant anime, I'd say. Pretty
Mhm.
significant, pretty significant franchise in anime and manga in general, I'd say.
For sure.
The car can't believe it. I mean,
I know. It's a very exciting news.
but for this episode, we're going to be talking about the Full Metal Alchemist franchise.
Yeah, mostly Brotherhood, but we might mix in some other stuff. I at least have seen the original show. I don't know if you have.
I have seen elements of it. The problem with watching the original is when you try to watch the original right after watching Brotherhood, it is very hard to get into.
Yeah, that's like the best advice I could give. And this actually extends into a few other series as well. Specifically, well, one of the ones that comes to mind is Avatar. Is you don't want to watch the two series back to back. You want to give them some breathing space in between because it just kind of like pollutes your opinion of one or the other if you watch them back to back.
Yeah, especially with FMA where like the two series are pretty similar for like the first like 20 or something episodes,
Mhm.
and then they just both of them go in completely different directions. So
Yeah, for sure.
one of them's super accurate to the manga, the other not so much. But
Right.
yeah, so a little backstory, I guess. FMA is not that old. I mean, the manga itself ran from the manga itself is actually a post 2000s manga running from 2001 to 2010,
Mhm.
which it's pretty old now, but it's weird when I see 2000s there because that just doesn't feel old to me for some reason.
No, not at all.
And it was written by I'm gonna butcher this probably. Do you know her name better than just so I don't
Hiromu Arakawa.
okay, I don't want to butcher that.
Mhm.
Um yeah, so she wrote and illustrated this manga, which is always fun because I love female manga artists. They draw a lot differently than male artists, and like they have a specific style to them. I'm saying this because I'm really biased, and Rumiko Takahashi is my favorite artist, but
Mhm.
um, Arakawa's art is also very excellent.
Oh yeah, it's very good. And I have excuse me. I have also read the manga as well as seeing the series, and yeah, the art's solid all the way through.
Yeah, I've read most of the manga. I skipped around at points just because it's what's cool about Brotherhood. The second anime is it is one of probably the most accurate anime adaptations there is.
Mhm.
Like I can't really remember. Did they? I know there's like one filler episode for the most part, and other than that, they really didn't skip anything.
There's two filler episodes. The first episode, funny enough, is a filler episode with
Okay.
the water guy.
Right. That's true.
And then there was an episode about midway through. I think it was right after. Um, I could be getting mixed up, but I want to say it's right around the time where Ed Ling and Envy get swallowed by
Right.
gluttony. Um, but it was the one where Hohenheim was having that like weird fever dream
Mm,
where like he keeps like seeing visions of people and he sees like the young what's her name, Panako,
I think
Winry's
so.
grandmother. He sees like
Yes.
visions
Yep.
of her and of Ed Now's mom and all sorts of stuff like that. That one was the only other filler episode to my knowledge.
Okay. Yeah. So it's like there's barely any filler, and the two filler episodes really aren't even. They aren't jarring enough to even be noticed as filler unless you've actually read the manga. I'd say.
Yeah, for sure.
And doesn't it pretty much cover everything from the manga?
For the most part, there are a few things that were in the manga that were actually in the original show and not Brotherhood.
Okay.
Things like uh Yoki, is that his name? Yoki? The guy with the mustache that hangs out with Scar.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, his whole backstory stuff that is covered in the original anime, but is only kind of referenced a little bit in Brotherhood.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And there's a
I
couple
gotta.
other little things too, like there's a fight between Ed and Mustang at one point. There's also a scene where Major Armstrong tries to set up havoc with one of his sisters, which is a
Okay.
really funny scene.
Got it. Yeah, it's interesting to me because like this series is like held on a pedestal that's to a point where the fan base for it's almost a little bit overwhelming at times.
Yeah, it's actually funny because I was just listening to the episode of Gaming Memories that you and Alex were on a couple years back,
Oh yeah.
and right around the time where I left off from listening to it was when you were talking about how like the Full Metal fan base and how crazy they get and stuff.
It's true though. I mean like they are so I hate using Mal as an example because Mal in hindsight as I've learned over the year isn't a great website slash app for tracking manga and the people that hang out on it are pretty insane, but
Mhm.
for years like FMA Brotherhood has been number one, like the number one overall rated anime for like ever. And anytime any other anime like overpasses it, they like throw a bitch fit and like either review. They used to review bomb whatever anime overpassed it just to lower its review score, or they
Mhm.
would just like bot the hell out of the score for FMA Brotherhood just to get it back to number one. Like to the point where Mal had to change how the rating system works just so they would stop doing that.
Right.
Because I remember like it would happen a long time. The big one that was like a huge like crazy moment was when Fruit Baskets ironically like hit number one for a brief period and they like went insane, and that's honestly what caused a lot of the changes.
I can imagine.
But it's like I get it, it's a really good anime, but like I wouldn't say it's number one for me personally. I'm not sure if it's your number one either, but
I would. It's. I mean, you know what my number one is, but
true.
I will say that I do think it is the perfect package.
Yeah, it is.
As far as like it's got the drama, it's got the action, it's got the beautiful animation, beautiful soundtrack, top notch acting. The story is all there. The characters are alive and vibrant. Like it does have everything, but at the same time, like I don't understand why fans do stuff like that because when something is that good, you kind of have to let it stand on its own merit. Because if you just bomb it like that, it kind of just makes it look bad.
Well, yeah, that's kind of the reputation that the fan base has gotten over the years now is that they're all I might get flack for saying this, but I feel like they're a little insecure at times with their show and they need it to be number one at times, but eh, that's that's besides the point. The show itself, though, like taking away all of that craziness, is phenomenal. Like it deserves all the praise it gets.
For sure.
So I think we've talked about in the past how I got into it because it was actually I was hanging out with you a couple years ago, and we had just for shits and giggles watched like the first 3 episodes of the anime. I believe this had to have been I was still living there, so it had to have been like either very late 2021 or like extremely early 2022. I'd say
Um,
because it was still in the house before the tree incident happened.
yeah, the tree happened in October of 2021, late October. So
Okay, so it must have been
it would
2021.
have had to have been before that.
Okay. Yeah, so it was definitely 2021. So that's got like 3 years ago now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's wild.
But I remember because you would we watched the first 3 episodes and you basically were like, watch episode 4. If that one doesn't hook you, then the show's not going to be for you. And you just told you alluded to me that it was a doozy. And
Yeah,
I was like, all right, it can't be that bad. And what's hilarious is you watch it and the whole time you're like, this ain't that bad. And then you get to the end and you're just your mind literally just goes, what the fuck? Like,
yeah,
and you were right, it hooks you from there, basically. And I believe I binged the entirety of Brotherhood in like 2 weeks after that.
yeah. That it definitely happens, and that's exactly why I wanted to stop there, at episode 3 when we were watching it together, because I was like, we're gonna end up getting sucked into it if we continue to watch. So I'm just gonna leave it there, and I'll let you face the horrors of that episode on your own later on.
Yeah.
Um, but like, oh, I think I also made it a point to mention that, like, this is as bad as it gets. So, you know, if that makes you squeamish or whatever, don't worry, it gets better.
Yeah, like the only other so obviously spoiler warning if going forward, like just so we've been pretty good so far, but I will say spoiler warning here. We're probably gonna spoil some major plot elements. Um a later scene that was pretty that hits you pretty hard too is when Major Hughes gets killed.
Yeah,
That's pretty depressing, especially because his wife and kid and stuff.
yeah. Well, I mean, the whole act of him being killed wasn't like it was a hard scene, and it was definitely emotional. But like, I don't know, you can't really beat the dark
It, it
nature of episode 4.
it wasn't as shocking as what
It really desensitizes you.
I'm already forgetting his what's the character the guy's name.
Um, the oh shit,
I know he's
Shao Tucker.
Shout Tuck. Yeah, he basically everything he's pretty much like the biggest monster in this entire series in reality.
Oh yeah, like
What
screw whatever, all the homunculi and father and all them. Like, no, this dude's the worst.
yeah, it says a lot that like the main villain of this series, like the big bad that gets like built up throughout the entire 64 episode run, isn't even the most heinous person in this show. It's literally the guy, the one-off character that appears in episode 4.
Mm-hmm. And is killed, but like at the end of the episode by
Yeah,
Scar. Like,
yeah, he literally. It's funny because the only reason I remember him is he's played by Chuck Huber,
yep.
and like it's interesting because it's one of Chuck Huber's more like unique roles where he doesn't sound like 17
Mm-hmm.
or King Pilaf or Emperor Pilaf, sorry. Um,
Yeah, it's all the same.
but it's like, should we spoil what happens? Because I mean, everyone who's seen FMA knows at this
I
point.
mean, the memes are everywhere.
Yeah,
It's
he basically
inseparable.
he was the guy that like created like the chimera, like fusing people like infusing people with animals, and that's how he got his whole uh state alchemist status.
Mhm.
But he never really improved his art from there. So when he needs to get basically renew his contract, he goes and gets desperate and makes another one by using his daughter and their dog, and it is horrifying.
Yes, it's very depressing to see.
It's also heavily implied that his original experiment he used his wife.
I think it's pretty explicit. He
Yeah,
definitely used his wife.
yeah. It's like this guy's kind of fucked, and it's really sad because they showcase. He thinks like this new chimera he created out of his daughter is like the greatest thing ever, and they're basically kind of like, you realize this shit's like gone, like we've gotten so much better at this shit in this time,
Hmm.
because there's like other chimera that appear later on that are way more advanced and not as freakish.
Yeah, it's like, hey, this is what it would have been like if you had done it right, and she would have been totally fine. Like,
This is what it would have been like if you had actually done fuck all for like the last how many years,
for real.
basically. Yeah,
Oh, jeez.
the worst part too is like she gets basically put down at during the episode at the same time as her dad, and you think that it would be a one-off thing, but no, this is like Ed and Al's like biggest trauma like for the rest of the series at this point.
Oh yeah, going all the way to the final episode, there, it always gets brought up. It's always like this is the. I don't want to say it's necessarily what they're trying to atone for. That's not really the right word, but it's kind of what they're trying to rise above the whole time.
Yeah, it's actually funny because like I love the memes for this because like I know when like Breath of the Wild, not Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom was announced, Link has that ability to like merge things, so everyone was making parodies of it. Um,
Jesus.
my personal favorite meme though was it was a Spy Family meme where Shao Tucker is like creepily approaching Anya and Bond, and then you see Yor
I've
in
seen
the
that one.
sky about to fucking murder him. It's like the greatest thing ever.
I've seen that one. That one's good.
Yeah, like there was a bunch of funny ones, but
There's the classic fusion ha.
yeah, it's just people have made light out of a very fucked up scene in an anime at this point.
Yeah, no kidding.
Uh, Going back though, I guess we should probably talk about the start of the show, and the show starts very strong, like the whole like backstory between basically explaining Ed and Al's backstory.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it kind of like it starts off with like the ice guy, and it kind of gives you like a little taste of everything that's going on. Like, you meet all the characters. You even meet like the Fuhrer Bradley. Um, it kind of gives you like an idea of how alchemy works and the military structure of the country that they're in and everything.
Hmm.
And then going into the next episode is really when they start unfolding their whole backstory.
Yeah, and it's pretty deep. Like the next episode, like literally, like basically it explains the whole like Ed and Al's mother died, and I mean she had the haircut. She had the haircut that doomed her.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, she dies pretty young, and Ed by this point was really starting to get into alchemy. So of course they look up how to bring back the dead, which is a huge no-no in the world of alchemy. And they pull off the human what's it pronounced? It's like
Transmutation.
human transmutation, and they create this abomination. And
Mm.
in exchange for creating this abomination, they also have to give up something. And I think it's like explained that like the thing that they lose, like that truth, it's truth, right? Is the
Yeah.
little shadow guy there.
Mm-hmm.
It's explained that the thing that truth takes from you is always like an ironic fate kind of thing. Like I think it's like so Al loses his leg, not Al. Ed loses his leg, and that's I think it had to do with like Ed really wanted like to stand up for like his people or something like that. It was like something like that. So they
Yeah,
took
it was like kind of like you don't have a leg to stand on kind of thing.
yeah. So of course they took one of his legs, and then Alphonse has probably has the worst one because he just wanted to feel his mother's warmth. So Truth took away his body and his ability to feel,
Mm-hmm.
which is extremely fucked up.
Yeah.
And then in the process of that, not Al, Ed also has. I'm gonna mix the two of them up just periodically. um, Ed, to save his brother, basically sacrifices his arm to put Al's spirit inside a suit of armor. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why Ed, throughout the series, has a automail arm and leg. And automail is just a thing that exists in this universe. It's basically like robotic prosthetics that everyone has, and it's
Kind of awesome.
Technology. Yeah, they are pretty cool. Unless you're in the unless you're in a cold area, then you have to have modified ones.
Yeah, that's
You can't
true.
get them wet, which
You get
kind of sucks.
frostbite and shit.
Yeah, they're pretty neat, but they're also kind of unwieldy at times.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's like super kind of like dark from the start, and of course the whole main plot kind of goes from there, where it's like Ed and Al's whole journey basically throughout the story is they want to get their bodies back, essentially.
Yeah. Basically just restore them back to the way they were. Right?
And what's sad is too the human transmutation they didn't even bring their mom back. It just brought this fucked up like thing essentially.
Yeah, it's like gross thing with like rib cage on the outside and
That
which
Alphonse's spirit was stuck in for a few minutes, which was lovely.
which actually ended up being like a relief to them when they found that out.
That it wasn't actually their mom. Yeah,
Yeah. Which I guess I kind of get.
yeah. I mean, that would be pretty traumatizing. I mean, it traumatized them pretty bad.
Yeah, I'd say so.
um, yeah. So we're not going to go note for note, obviously, but to go through like some of the major events. I mean, what do you think the best place to go from here is?
um hmm. Oh no, we already talked about the whole Shao Tucker thing. I mean, there's the whole Ishval conflict is a pretty big thing that kind of goes throughout the whole series.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because like despite being an anime, this is one of those anime that doesn't exclusively take place in Japan this time around. So there's a lot of very like non-standard character designs that stick out a lot, but like they also make the anime like kind of stand on its own at the same time.
Yeah, there's only like like four Asian characters in the whole show.
Yeah, and they weren't even in the original series.
Yeah.
Spoiler warning for that. But yeah, I guess we should probably explain that a little bit, the whole two anime thing.
Yeah. So I guess I don't remember exactly when the first show came out, but I know that when it came out, the manga had only gotten up to maybe like 12 volumes or so, or might even be less than that. I'm not sure. Um,
So the original FMA ran for 51 episodes from 2003 to 2004.
yeah. So yeah, it only ran for about a year. And obviously the manga was still super early on at that point, so they didn't have the whole story. So
Yes.
I think basically Arakawa went to the animation company and basically just said like, hey, here's the basic idea. Like obviously you have what I've written so far for the manga. So you can start with that and then just roll with it and do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, in a very like unprecedented an unprecedented I can't speak today way compared to like most manga at the time, because like other series that ran into the same issue like Inuyasha also hit that inevitable wall of running out of manga, and they stretched that out as long as they could before they just put it on hiatus until it was finished. um Rurouni Kenshin ran into the wall, and infamously they did filler for an entire season to the point where people turned on the show and it didn't get picked up for a continuation.
Yeah.
Um, trying to think of
Na-
another.
Naruto.
Naruto, just the entire show, basically.
Yeah.
Um, One Piece to a degree. One Piece has handled it better over the
Yeah.
years.
One Piece, I feel like more, they mostly like stretch out scenes as opposed to just making whole new shit.
Yeah. Hunter x Hunter, this happened to twice,
Mhm.
where they ran out of material. Black Clover currently has run out of material. They tried stretching it with filler and gave up because it was bad. And they just put it on hiatus.
Mhm.
Um, I'm actually thinking about it. One of the few animes that I think got away with it was Yu Yu Hakusho. Like Yu Yu Hakusho is probably one of the most accurate anime adaptations there is.
Yeah, I don't even know if Yu Yu Hakusho really has it. I think the only filler episode in Yu Yu Hakusho might be the last episode.
Yeah, and even that's still for the most part in the manga. They just stretch it and expand it a little.
Yeah, they just made it a little. They just presented it in a different way.
Yeah. Oh, Fruit Baskets. That's another one where they ran out of manga.
Yeah. That's
because
something that tends to happen a lot because people tend to rush to make an anime adaptation for something that's brand new.
yeah, well, it's like it's kind of like they're super popular, so they want to cash in on it while it's popular.
Yeah.
Uh, the problem is though, a lot of them manga artists can't keep up. Like I believe in Fruit Basket's case, the artist, she had hurt her hand and she wasn't able to draw for a long period of time, so she had to there was kind of this weird hiatus, like just kind of period where they couldn't get any more manga. So the first anime ends pretty early into the manga's run, and she had such a bad experience with that studio that she ended up just not picking it up until years later when it was finished.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, because even modern anime have this issue too. Like Spy Family's about to run out of manga very quick.
Oh yeah.
That's why season 2 is so short, because they only have so much material they can go off of.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's why I like the concept of seasonal anime a lot more. I mean, yeah, it sucks to have to wait for some of these things, like the 3-4 years we had between seasons 1 and 2 of Attack on Titan was ridiculous. But
yeah,
but you end up with a better quality product when you do stuff like that.
well, it's funny too, because then you also get the opposite effect where like a series like Kaguya-sama, that manga's done. Like they got plenty of material, but there's like no real word on if we're gonna get a season 4. And I think the most infamous one is Comey, where it's like that there's like almost 30 volumes of Comey, and they've only covered up to volume like 8, I think. So
Wow. Jeez.
yeah, it's like they got plenty to work with, but doesn't look like they're gonna do much more. So who knows there?
Yeah.
But yeah, so going back to FMA though, FMA legit, like the first like 20 or so episodes, pretty much right on, and then it just completely goes off the rails.
Oh yeah.
Like to the point where the 2003 show arguably has its own fan base, because it does have fans that still prefer it over Brotherhood.
It's pretty much the people who watched it first. I think that's what it really comes down to is whatever you watch first ends up being your definitive. Like if you grew up with the original, then that tends to be your favorite. And then if you watch Brotherhood later in life and that was the first one you watched, then that tends to be the one you like more.
Yeah. Oddly enough, the original I think is darker at times than like Brotherhood is.
Uh, yeah, depending on what's going on. Shao Tucker is alive through like the whole thing,
Yeah, I noticed that when I briefly watched it. I was like, why? I'm like,
and
why?
he's like weird. Like I don't know, he does like some weird experiment on himself and turns himself into like this weird blob chimera thing.
Of course.
Yeah, it's
um,
it's strange. And then he tries to like create another one of his daughter. I don't know. It's weird.
yeah, and there's like assaults that happen in the anime that's bizarre. They just do some really weird. They went some weird places in the original FMA.
Yeah, they certainly did. But a lot of it was there's a lot of really interesting stuff in there too.
Mm.
Honestly, um, I don't know how much you know about it. I don't want to like if it's something you want to look into later on. I don't want to spoil it for you, but
Um, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like I might watch it again because I've only seen parts of it.
mhm.
I know the ending is really fucking weird because they end up like in the human world at one point.
Yeah, the whole concept of what's behind the portal of truth is very, very different in that show. Because what's behind the portal? Well, and if you already know that, I'll just say it outright. It behind the portal is our world.
Yeah, like the whole Conquerors of Shambhala movie is like this really weird. Like they end up in our world at the end. It's bizarre.
Yeah, and by the end of the show, Ed and Al are just in our world, and that's just where they live now.
Yeah, it's I give them props for trying their own take on it, but I'll say it now. Brotherhood's story is just better.
Yeah, it's just makes more sense. It has like that kind of well thought out structure to it, where you
Yeah,
know that a lot of thought went into this story and probably had a lot of this story mapped out before it even started.
yeah. Honestly, like it's crazy to me because like we had mentioned earlier, like the entire Ling subplot isn't even in the original series. Like that's completely just not a thing.
Yeah, the original Greed is the only Greed you see in that
Yeah,
series.
which is both kind of awesome but also kind of depressing because the second Greed is more interesting. Honestly, the first Greed is fun because he's crazy and he's voiced by Chris Padden, but
Mhm.
the second Greed it is a more interesting character just because you have the whole dynamic where he's both Ling and Greed at the same time.
Yeah. The
And
homunculi as a whole is also really weird in the original series. The way that that whole thing works.
yeah, because like, isn't one of them completely a different character?
A couple of them are, yeah,
I believe isn't Wrath isn't the same character, right? It's
yeah. Some of them are switched up. Bradley is Pride in the original series as opposed to Wrath.
yeah, that's what it is.
Um,
Because Pride doesn't because his son or child, quote unquote son, wasn't introduced in the original, was he? Or
I don't remember.
yeah, the whole thing is like they changed it around at the end because the whole ending to the original show is just weird. Like it's so different.
Yeah, it's very different. Um,
Um, that was also a thing though that kind of threw me off was the fact that the quote unquote like big good at the beginning ends up being one of the villains towards the middle of the series.
yeah,
Even though like you watch it now and you kind of get like there's a lot of like German vibes, like World War II Germany era vibes in this show, and like you get a
oh,
lot of like the Fuhrer vibes from Bradley.
very, very much. Yes. Well, that's one of the things is Arakawa watched a lot of like old war B movies and stuff, and you definitely see a lot of that in this series.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic, especially for an anime.
Hmm.
It makes it stand out. That's one of the reasons why this show is so specific, like such a well known and like well regarded show. I think is just its style is so spot on.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, going on though, I'm like trying to think of other big moments that we should probably talk about.
Um,
Um,
God, it's been a little bit since I've watched it now, but at this point, you know, I've seen the show at least a few times. Read the manga at least once.
I find it interesting that there's an entire like group of like characters in this series that are just like souls trapped in like armor because of like they lost their original bodies.
Oh yeah, Barry the Chopper.
Barry the Chopper is like the best character, and he does not get enough screen time.
No, not at all. I wish he had lasted longer. He was such a fun, goofy character, but like at the same time, he's a mass murderer. That was actually
Yeah,
another weird thing in the original series. His whole deal was weird
yeah,
because
uh,
you actually meet him as a human in the original series before he becomes the
oh,
suit guy.
yeah, which is funny because you meet his human form also in the Brotherhood, and it's actually leads to his demise in the end.
Yeah. Yes, I love how by the end of that whole thing, he's just like a little piece of scrap with the blood seal on it.
Yeah,
Like
and then
he's just
it gets erased by his original body, and he's like, "No, stop! Don't do that."
yeah. It's just so silly.
He's also voiced by Jerry Jewell, which is just hilarious to me.
Hmm. Um,
Jerry Jewell has range. Like this was the show that made me realize that.
oh yeah, for sure.
Speaking of voice actors, we should probably talk about the funny cast that did Full Metal Alchemist, because there's a lot of familiar faces in this show.
Oh, for sure.
Like, I mean, obviously, the main character Ed is Vic Mignogna, and it's probably Vic Mignogna's most iconic role at this point.
Easily. The only one other one that I think would even come close is maybe Broly,
Yeah, but
but
even then, like
even that,
that's just screaming Kakarot a lot. Like
yeah. What
that's
aside from like the newest Broly movie, but yeah, I definitely think Ed is the number one.
yeah. I mean, I'm not going to get into the controversy surrounding Vic at this point, but I'm just going to talk about him for his performance here, and like it's spot on. Like Ed is such a like interesting character because he's like kind of an annoying little shit, but you also really like him because he's smart but also dumb at the same time.
Yeah, he's kind of like smarmy. You know, he's kind of a punk, but you know, it's not he's not as much of a punk as like say like a Yusuke Urameshi, but
Yeah,
he's kind of just like a more you know uh rough around the edges.
yeah, and I find it interesting too that like Alphonse, because he lost his body and he's basically been stuck in a suit of armor, he really hasn't matured the same way Ed has because he's still very childlike
Yeah, for
in a
sure.
lot of ways. And we find out later that's mostly because he's basically in stasis, like at this point,
Hmm.
which
Which
is
it is even more pronounced in the original series, actually.
yeah, it's really so jumping way to the end when we do eventually see Ed Alphonse's body like in the gate at the gate. He's like scrawny as shit and basically like barely living at this point.
Yeah, he's
And
just like all emaciated. He's just long hair, long fingernails, just like super gaunt. I think is the right word for it. He looks very gaunt.
yeah. But what I find insane is like they explain how he is alive, and it's actually really fucked up. Is like he's basically stealing all of Ed's nutrition, and that's why Ed is so short.
Yeah, I love how they just had to throw in that little explanation,
Yeah,
and like Ed even like mentions it as they're like figuring it all out. He's just like that actually explains everything. Like,
yeah. It's like he's basically stealing. He's basically siphoning his life force from Ed, and that's why Ed is like just like short and kind of like scrawny, which is
hey, and actually, come to think of it, that makes a lot of sense because once I think around the time when when Al starts kind of having those weird like flashes where like he loses consciousness and he sees his body and all that other stuff. I think that's around the time like when that time skip happens and Ed does actually grow a little bit.
yeah. Because I think because it's like Al's like losing connection to the suit of armor, basically.
Yeah,
At
because they're
least
out of sync.
yeah, that's at least what I assume it means. It's a little unclear. Um, so speaking of subplots now, like there's a whole bunch of like kind of subplots that go on. Like obviously you got Ed and Al are trying to find philosopher's stones because they believe that's how they're going to get their body back.
Mhm.
You've also got so then we've mentioned him a few times. You've got Ling and Lon his assistant Lon Fan who are from one of the neighboring regions, and they're also looking for a full. Well, Ling is looking for the basically like the source of like
He's basically just trying to find a way to bring about immortality, whether that's the
yeah
Philosopher's Stone or the armor thing or whatever.
yeah he's basically looking for a way to live forever, kind of. Even though philosopher's
Um,
stones technically don't make you live forever, but that's besides the point. Um,
there's also May, right? That's her name,
yeah,
May.
she's also looking for. So there's a whole bizarre like cultural thing from the land. I forget the name of it, but the land that Ling and
Shing.
Bing. Yep. There's a whole bizarre like cultural thing where it's like the king of emperor of Qing basically has like 12 wives and they all gave birth to children, and it's like the children have to basically fight for who's going to take over.
I think the basic idea of it is the emperor has a wife from every one of like the major clans
Yes. And it
and has a child with each of those wives. So there's a prince and princess in every clan in the country, every like major clan, and they all have to like compete to see who's going to succeed
yeah,
as emperor.
it's kind of a fucked up thing when you really think about it, because it's kind of like they're basically fighting each other for this. And
It's
yeah,
the
there's
ultimate sibling rivalry.
pretty much because you see it a lot whenever Ling runs into a Mei. Although it's not so much Ling's kind of Ling's an interesting character because he's a very goofy ass character when you first meet him, but you realize he's secretly plotting the entire time.
Yeah.
Ironically, there's more like there's more issues between Mei and Lanfan than anything because they just don't like each other.
Yeah, it was the whole thing when after Lon Fawn cuts her arm off to
Oh,
like
yeah, that scene is
escape,
that
and then
scene is fucked.
she's recovering in the doctor's office or whatever, and freaking May just kind of comes around the corner and throws a kunai at her. Like,
Yeah, and then the doctor's like, "I told you two to sit down and eat."
yeah,
Beats him over
the
the
doctor
head.
guy is one of my favorite characters. He's awesome.
He doesn't stick around very long, but he definitely leaves his impression.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those like really colorful side characters.
Mm. Another subplot we have is we've got obviously the stuff going on back in the capital with God, I'm forgetting their names right now.
Mustang and
Mustang.
Havoc, Hawkeye, all them.
Yeah, they're all essentially like they have their own thing because they're also trying to like basically find out what the weird shit that's going on. Because doesn't Mustang not trust Bradley at all, or is it heavily implied? Kind of.
I think at first it's more so like he just doesn't like what he's doing with the country, so he wants to become the Führer to try and fix all the problems, like, you know, stop all the wars from happening and stuff, all that. Because obviously he's a war vet and he knows the horrors of war. And he doesn't want to, you know, he doesn't want that to continue into the future. You know, kind of like atone for all the things he's done, the lives he's taken, all that.
Yeah, because that's another ironic fate is later on when he gets forcefully like he basically forcefully performs to human transmutation later on in the series. He ends up losing his eyes because he needs his eyes to run the country as an ironic thing.
Yeah, it was like a, I don't know, the way that the dwarf in the flask kind of explained it, he did it in a very like poetic way. It was just something like the man who had a vision for the future had his sight taken, that kind of thing.
Yeah, although he gets his sight back at the end, like in like the most like nonchalant way ever, but that's besides the point.
Like, yeah, the what's his name? Marco shows up. He's just like, hey, I got
still got one of these
philosopher stone.
I still called bullshit on that though. Like he got forced through the portal. Like he did not perform it, but that's besides the point.
Yeah, that was pretty bullshit. But I mean, it makes sense that they would figure something like that out. But at the same time, it's like, well, if they could do that, why didn't they just do that instead of waiting all these years for people to come up who just happened to do it? Why didn't you just do that? Yeah, obviously there was a price, you know, there was a toll that it took on Pride when he did that, but I mean, obviously, Father doesn't really give a shit, so what does it matter?
Yeah, I think another, and then I think the only other like notable like person who had something taken from them was Ed and Al's master.
Yes, it's one of the best characters in the whole show.
Yeah, she's a badass, but like her whole thing was that they had a baby that had a miscarriage, and so she tried to bring the baby back. So Truth took away her ability to have babies ever again, which is, and she never got it healed. So she just like vomits blood like randomly throughout the series.
Yeah, like whenever she's getting worked up, she just
yeah. I love the like relationship between her husband and Armstrong later on too, because they're just bros.
That's one of the best things. Like one of my favorite scenes in the whole series, and they meet super early on in the manga.
Yeah, Armstrong is quite possibly one of the best characters in both Armstrongs, but particularly the first one we meet is
the Major.
Yeah, he is wonderful.
Yeah, it's just the fact that he's voiced by Chris Sabat just makes it even better.
It's the token Chris Sabat role where he's like over the top for no reason, and it's great.
Super manly. I just ripped my shirt off for no reason. Like,
yeah, his shirt just explodes at random points off, and he's just like, "Because I am so manly." And it's like, yeah.
It's delightful.
And he's not even the most like intense person in that family because his sister is way more intense later on.
Oh yeah, big time.
I'm trying to think. Well, yeah, we also have to mention Scar, and he's got his own journey that he's going on.
Yeah, which is like an extension of the whole thing with Mustang, because the war that Mustang took part in was the war against Scar's homeland, which kind of set Scar on this whole path of revenge. And
that's another scene in the anime that's super like effed up is when you find out what happened to Scar's brother.
Yeah, when you realize that his arm isn't even his arm.
Yeah, it was like because his brother was like the one who created like the alchemy and was like gonna like revolutionize everything, and then of course he gets killed, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what happened was Scar was mortally injured. His arm was off.
Yeah.
And his brother, who I don't think ever got a name, by the way.
No, I don't think he did. He was more of an impact character than actually a plot related one.
Yeah. But like basically the way that Scar's brother's alchemy worked was he had one arm. He had like tattoos on both of his arms, and one of them did deconstruction, one of them did reconstruction.
Hmm.
So he like detached his deconstruction arm and attached and reattached it to Scar's stump, I guess. And I mean, I'm guessing he just bled out after that.
I always kind of assumed, now that you mentioned the construction reconstruction, he like used his reconstruction to reconstruct Scar's arm at the price. Maybe he did like he had to trade some himself basically to do it. I don't know. Some
Something
he,
like that. Well, I mean, alchemy, they make it a big point of difference between alchemy and alchemy, where alchemy is generally used more for like medicine, it's for
yeah.
like treatment and stuff. So I guess it would make sense that you could use that to reattach an arm.
Yeah, it's never explained exactly what happened there, but it's dark. It's very but you understand the whole like what why Scar is the way he is, because he is like probably the biggest like anti-villain or anti-hero, I guess, in this. It's he's kind of both. He's very much in a he's villainous, but he's kind of also a hero at the same time.
He's a very complicated character, but that's part of what makes him such a well-rounded character, and he goes through a lot of changes throughout the series. Like really kind of gets a good look at himself in the mirror at a certain point.
He kills Shao Tucker. That automatically makes him a hero.
This is true. This is true.
Um, yeah, but he's got his whole journey. Like, there's actually a fun subplot with him and May, because May also uses alchemy,
Yep.
so they have a bit of a bonding moment there. Like,
Yeah, he gets his whole little group.
basically, his whole thing is he's against all alchemy users,
Mhm.
in a sense, and like when he sees her using alchemy, he kind of immediately takes a liking to her because of that.
I think it's more so the military alchemists that he
Yeah,
dislikes because he doesn't specifically target Alphonse. He only targets Ed.
yeah, it's unclear with Alphonse because he blows Alphonse up a few times, but Alphonse is a suit of armor, so he's fine.
Yeah, but I mean, Alphonse was directly attacking, trying to defend Ed. So
Yeah,
that makes more sense.
we haven't talked about Winry much yet.
No, I mean, she's definitely an important character.
Well, it's
Uh,
interesting because like her early appearances are pretty. She's like the token, just like childhood friend who doesn't do much, and then you find out later that she's the one that made the auto mail for Ed,
yeah,
and then we find out she's actually this brilliant mechanic.
which is it's like a really cool contrast between her and her parents, who were doctors. They're
Mm.
actually the ones who saved Scar's life. And then when he woke up and realized what happened to his arm, he just freaked out and killed them.
Yeah, and that's why she has a grudge the entire series for the most part.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting way that the story unfolds like that. Like,
What's crazy to me is everybody is linked together somehow. Like everything connects in a weird like roundabout way.
yeah, and that's part of what I mean when I at the beginning of this when I said that the show has everything. It really does. It's so it's like shows like say Dragon Ball or Inuyasha, stuff like that. Like it's a very linear series kind of thing.
It's episodic, like kind of serialized in a
Full
way.
Metal Alchemist is a tapestry. Everything is connected.
Yeah. Um yeah, I was gonna bring up with Winry though, like her reactions whenever Ed destroys his automail are priceless.
Is what now?
Whenever Ed destroys his automail, her reactions are priceless.
Oh yeah, that's the best. Except
Because
for the
then
one time when it was kind of her fault.
yeah, I'm sure Ed deserved it for something though.
Yeah, well, I mean, it ended up saving his life ultimately. So
Yeah. There's also the one of the most like completely like random scenes in this entire show is when she's like taking her shirt off and Ed's just in the room for no reason.
eating a sandwich.
Yeah. And he just looks over like, huh?
I just wanted a quiet place to eat my sandwich.
It's like that is like one of the rare, just like weird anime slapstick scenes that like it doesn't really fit anything else in this series. It's just there. And I find it really amusing.
Especially in that part of the series, because that was at a point in the series where everything was getting super heavy, super dramatic. So like there was a lot more of that kind of like lighthearted slapsticky stuff at the beginning, but by that point there wasn't really much of it.
Yeah,
So for it
especially
to just get
because
thrown in there,
this isn't a super fan servicey anime either.
not at all.
Like all the female characters are very their attractiveness does not have anything to do with their characters pretty for the most part. Like they're all very
Very strong.
well developed, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I mean, you got General Armstrong, Hawkeye. Um, uh, is it Izumi Curtis or Mizumi? See
I think
her.
I think it's Azumi.
I think it's Izumi. Yeah, her sandals throw me off because I'm pretty sure it's like WC or
Yeah,
MC.
yeah, I don't,
So that always throws me off. I always think it's Mizumi instead of Izumi. But
honestly thinking about it, I think the most fan servicey character, like female character in this, is probably Winry, and even then, it's mostly just because she's got like the schoolgirlish outfit for like a lot of her scenes. But then, like her other scenes, she's in like her workshop outfit.
yeah, I think it's just because she shows midriff, and that's like the
Yeah,
most fan servicey thing about it.
she's also the only quote unquote younger character in the series, not counting May. That's way too young.
Even though she ends up with Alphonse at the end.
I mean, he's like got the mentality of an
She
8-year-old.
does hit puberty by the time where that happens, though, so I guess that's okay.
It happens off screen, and we don't see when, so we can assume it was at a good time. That's how I always put it.
Yep, just like what's her name with in Inuyasha?
Oh, you mean in Yashahime, how it's revealed that Rin and Sesshomaru are a thing?
Yep.
Yeah, it happened after she turned 18. That's all you need to know, and nothing. You don't need to question it any farther.
I still don't buy that whole show happened over like 3 months. There's way too much stuff going on for that to be like 3 months.
We'll save that for when we do a Yashahime retrospective in the future.
Fair enough.
Yeah, because I got things to say about that show, but that's for another time. Let's just say. Yeah, but going back to like characters in Full Metal Alchemist, like, I mean, speaking of strong females, I mean, like Lanfan cuts her fucking arm off just to get away.
Metal as hell.
That's my favorite scene too. Like they're chasing after her scent, and it's like her arm, and then she attached it to a dog, and it's just running around with her bloody, dripping arm.
That poor dog.
I know.
Like, yeah, I feel bad for Lanfan in that scene, but I mostly feel bad for the dog.
Lanfan goes through a lot of shit throughout this anime.
Oh yeah, but she's such a badass, and I love her theme music.
She's basically Ling's like morality crutch, like throughout most of this, because like there's a scene where like he's about to take out Greed, and then because Greed's a shapeshift. It's Greed, right? No, not Envy.
Yeah. I was gonna say Greed's. Let's just say they share a body, so I don't know how that happened.
Yeah, he does screw with him too a little bit, but that's for different reasons. Envy, like he's trying to take out Envy, and then Envy shapeshifts into Lanfan just to mess with him.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't actually mention all the homunculuses. Homunculi. I can't talk tonight.
No, I'm with you, dude. I don't know. Like I said, I still got that like cold residuals. My head feels like it's full of helium.
Yeah, but the homunculi are very interesting characters because they're basically based off the 7 deadly sins.
Yeah, and which is always fun.
They're basically this series like monsters of the week because like they all kind of appear throughout and they get taken out at various times. Mm-hmm. What I find interesting about them is that their whole gimmick is that they're basically invulnerable to a degree because they're all basically they all have philosopher's stones and they allow them to regenerate, but they can only regenerate as long as the stones have souls to tribute, and they run out eventually because the first evidence we get of that is gluttony.
I think I could be mistaken, but I think the basic idea of how that works is like you have as many lives, like you take the philosopher's stone as like, you know, a life counter in a video game, say, and you know, every time you get a mortal injury and heal it, that's one soul lost. That's essentially the way I understand it. I
Yeah,
don't know if that's exactly how it works, but that's the way I always quantified it.
because the one who gets like injured the most is Gluttony because he's just kind of a big dumb, and
Yeah.
he's the first one to run out of souls because eventually his body starts going on him, and he's also weird because he's also secretly a portal.
Well, I mean, Lust gets taken out first,
Oh yeah, she does. Yeah.
but
Oh
I
yeah, the
mean,
one of the
Mustang
most
just burns her to death.
the most brutal fucking scenes in this entire anime.
Yeah.
Well, at first he like annihilates her, then she regenerates, and then like it's just this massive fight.
That is like one of the dopest scenes in the whole show, though. Like that whole like 4 episode like mini arc where what's her name gets framed for killing Hughes, and then
Oh,
they
it's
do that.
that's Hawkeye, right?
No, it was blanking on her name. Maria Ross. Was that it?
Oh, right, the other girl.
The
That's
one with
right.
the mole.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, it's like she gets framed for killing Hughes, and then they do this huge, like, elaborate plan where they pretend that Mustang killed her, but then
She just got
they,
sent off to another
yeah,
area.
and then they like set this trap to try and find like the like flush out the homunculi, and that was when what's his name Havoc gets paralyzed.
Yep. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, that whole little like 3 or 4 episode mini arc is like one of my favorite parts of the whole series.
Yeah, this series, it's funny for every like one moment of lightheartedness, it's just fucking like dark shit for like the next three.
Oh yeah, and it was so wild too. When I first watched it, because my buddy Matt was the one who introduced me to this show, and he loaned me the DVDs one day, and he lit like the first 2 seasons or something. He said, "Hey, you should watch this. It's a really good show." I said, "Okay, whatever." And I don't know. I didn't really give it much thought because I don't know. I'm kind of weird. Like I'm an anime fan. I like anime,
Yeah.
but I also know that there's a lot of weird shit out there.
Yeah. There very much is.
So like I'm always a little even if I know a person's tastes and I trust their opinion, I'm still a little apprehensive before I jump into something. So I kind of I sit for a while. And then one day he came over and we were having some drinks and stuff, and I was like most the way into the bag by that point. And he was like, "Hey, let's throw it on." I'm like, "Yeah, fuck it, why not?" And we watched the first 4 episodes, and I'm like, "What the hell?" Like, I was,
Yeah, I'm sure that's a great show to watch intoxicated too.
oh yeah, it was wild, but it got me sucked in. So
Hmm. Yeah, it's crazy because like basically the homunculi are like the basically the mini bosses throughout the anime, like that they have to keep running into because
pretty
most of them
much,
get defeated throughout. Like technically, the first Creed doesn't get really defeated; he gets murdered by father and turned into another homunculi.
yeah, it pretty much gets like reduced to the core components.
Yeah, and then placed in Ling, and then Ling kind of makes a deal with him and becomes like Darkling, which is like this bizarre. The ending is like when everything climaxes is great because like by then too like Lanfan comes back with her new automail arm.
Yeah, which is like awesome scene.
Yeah, her and hers is like they found a different mechanic for hers, so hers is like epic and like way overmade, but still badass at the same
Yeah,
time.
and I love how like how the homunculi, the 7 deadly sins, so to speak, are all kind of defeated by their own sin.
Yeah, pretty much.
How like gluttony is eaten, uh, pride throws away his pride, and that becomes his downfall.
Yeah,
Um, lust is defeated in just about the most unattractive way possible.
yep.
Uh, uh, Wrath dies with a smile on his face. You know what I mean? Like it. Uh,
Envy's the confusing one because he like gets reduced to that like little like toad thing for a while, or
yeah,
they're not really gendered, so I don't want to misgender them, but
I don't know what Envy's deal is.
yeah,
It's confusing, but
they're kind of a they more than anything, so I'll just leave it at that. But they
but
get
the,
reduced to this like weird like amoeba thing.
yeah, multiple times too. It's weird. But like, it's just a really interesting way to handle that whole thing. Like Greed, like figuring out that he already had all he needed. Like, and how each of these different sins kind of faces their own sin and is ultimately defeated and kind of, well, in some cases find peace, in other cases not so much. But
Yeah, I don't think Lust found peace.
no, and probably not Envy either.
Yeah, or Gluttony for that matter. He kind of just died.
Sloth, on the other hand, I mean,
Oh yeah, I
he just
forgot
kind of
about.
died. He just kind of
He,
got his
he's
ass
the
kicked.
he is the least remarkable of them because he literally shows up and is just gone after that.
Yeah, it was weird.
Um, I will say though, going back to Lust real quick, that's Laura Bailey. Like that's like one of her more like edgy roles, which is pretty impressive. Impressive.
That was Laura Bailey.
Yeah, Laura Bailey was Lust.
I didn't even realize that. Why? She got range. No wonder she
Yeah.
doesn't even bother with anime most of the time anymore.
Now she gets all these edgy like game roles.
Which a little off topic. I know we talked about it a little bit in the Yu Yu Hakusho episode. She did return as Keiko in the Yu Yu Hakusho OVAs.
Oh
So
yeah,
who knows?
they maybe
So she might come back for the remake. Who knows?
maybe I'd be okay with it.
But
I mean, Keiko has like maybe like half an hour of scenes in that show, so I mean, it's not like it's going to take that much. But
true. But I think the only anime roles that she's come back for recently has been Fruits Basket,
yeah, Toru and
Keiko for the OVA of Yu Yu Hakusho, and uh, I also was it Kushina in Naruto.
oh yeah, that was her.
Yeah, she plays Naruto's mom.
Yeah, I mean, she comes back so rarely that I guess it makes sense why she'd probably do a one-off.
Yeah, those are the only three that I saw on her list that she's done any even remotely recently.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah, but no, she was Lust, and she did a really good job.
Oh yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, all the voice actors in this show do a great job. It's actually kind of interesting. Like I had mentioned it in Fruit Baskets as well, but in the original anime, Alphonse was voiced by Aaron Dismuke,
Right.
and similar to that show, he had grown up and he could no longer do the role. So Alphonse was recast. I forget the uh, the lady that plays him in Brotherhood, but what's fun though is Aaron Dismuke later would reprise a role in the show as young Hohenheim. So that was interesting.
Oh, that is kind of cool.
I just
Hohenheim is another whole huge thing in this show too.
he's confusing as fuck. Like even
He's
after rewatching it a few times, I still don't get his deal.
he's such an interesting character. Like, especially like that's I think that might be my favorite episode in the whole series is when you learn his backstory.
Hmm.
You find out like literally everything in the whole series stems from him.
Well, I love the reveal of why Father looks like him
Yeah.
because it was like a little like eyeball thing that basically just latched onto him and clone basically took his image.
Yeah, well, it was made from his blood, so it
Yeah.
makes sense that that would be his look. Um, but like, and the whole reveal that like the whole origin of alchemy and alchemy, like Hohenheim is the person who founded alchemy and shit.
Hmm.
Like, and they never overtly like blatantly say it, but like if you're paying attention, you notice it. You know?
He has so few scenes throughout the series, like early on, but like whenever he does appear, he always leaves an impact. Like I think one of my favorites is when he meets up with Ed and Al for the first time after they uh, lost their bodies. Essentially, he sees Alphonse. He's like, "Is that my suit of armor?" He's like, "What have you done to it?"
That's the only thing left of my house.
Yeah, that was a good one. I like how he always just messes with Ed whenever he sees him.
Yeah.
It's funny too because you see him in his flashbacks and he looks a lot like Ed too.
Oh yeah, big time. Especially once Ed starts wearing the ponytail as opposed to the braid.
Yeah, after he goes through his character development at the end of the series.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I still say to this day, like that final climax, like at the end, is like one of the most epic parts of this entire show.
The final fight, or
Just everything leading up to that, like you get all the stuff going on with like Ling fighting as they're all like going together. You got Bradley fighting.
oh,
Basically,
it's
like,
the Promised Day as a whole.
yeah, basically that
Yeah.
entire arc, like section of the show and manga to a degree, is phenomenal. Like, because it's basically like the buildup of everything that we've been like building up to at this point. Because 64 episodes isn't short, but it's also not that long in hindsight.
Yeah, it's a fairly short as far as anime goes.
Yeah, it's about the same length as Fruit Baskets, the second Fruit Baskets that is.
Mhm.
Um, it's a fairly easy to watch one, so I always give it that.
Ironically,
Um,
it has the exact same episode count as Dragon Ball GT.
yeah,
So you can
and
kind of see the
it man
difference of what you could do with that episode count between the two.
it manages to tell so much more in so many episodes. So,
Yes.
but yeah, that final climax is great, especially like they get to the point where like I think one of the most like impressive scenes to me is like where Ed is like pinned against the wall, and then like Alphonse basically like reverses the trade that Ed made to get him into the suit of armor, and then Ed's arm comes back,
Mhm.
which is bizarre because it's still got the metal plating in it, so it's like, oh, that's gotta hurt.
I cry like a baby in that scene every single time.
Mm.
Every time. I have yet to see a single person watch that scene for the first time and not cry.
Well, I'm heartless, so
Many
um,
manly tears have been shed at this show.
my favorite too is then like we get the after Ed defeats father, he goes to Truth to get Al back, and the whole reveal basically where like Truth's like, so what are you going to give me now? 'Cause you've kind of screwed yourself here, and Ed's basically like, no, I know what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you my door or gate or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, the Truth's like, ah, you passed.
Yeah. That was the correct answer. You did it.
Yep. And it's basically like, basically, just to summarize it, Ed gives up his ability to do alchemy in exchange for Al's body and soul.
Which I never would have thought that as a possibility.
Yeah, it was a fun twist on it because like the it's kind of an ironic like thing where it's like the whole reason they got into this mess in the first part is because Ed discovered his alchemy abilities and got a little too into it.
Mhm.
And then of course the ironic fate is the way to fix everything is he has to give it up.
And you know what's funny is I don't think he would have realized it was a possibility if he wasn't like how we mentioned earlier how Al was like feeding off of Ed's life force.
Mm,
And when they get eaten by gluttony and they escape by going through the portal of truth again, and that was when he saw the body and everything else. If they didn't have that connection, if Al wasn't feeding off of his life force, I don't think he would have known that there was a difference between the two doors.
yeah.
Because both, everyone's door looks different. Everyone's door is different.
Mm, no,
So if he didn't see like, oh, there are two separate doors for each of us, that everyone who uses alchemy has their own door. If that wasn't the thing, I don't think he would have realized that was a possibility.
mm. I love Truth too because Truth is voiced by Lucy Christensen, and she just hams it up the entire time.
Oh, it's great. I love that whole like, I'm the world, I am the universe, I am God. Like that whole bit, I love that.
To me, that was an amazing like way to like finish up Ed's story though, because it's basically like that's like the ultimate lesson learned, like character growth moment where he's basically like he basically learns like all this shit. This power got me into all this shit, so I'm gonna just give it up to save my brother, basically.
Yeah. And even in that scene where he's giving up the door, he still brings up the little girl.
Hmm. Yeah, no, because he like mentions he's like I've made this power literally leads to so many things, and it's like he basically accepts that he's like I don't need it, and he gives it up like just like
Yeah.
that.
He's like, I have
I thought
things
that
in my life way more important.
yeah, I thought that was like super sweet. Like it was like such a nice like way to cap it off.
It's such a wholesome show.
Yeah, the ending definitely like because then after that it's basically like because at that point like father obviously dies, Hohenheim also dies because He was dying to begin with, I think.
Well, I think. Excuse me. I think the battle itself kind of wore him out because I mean the more you use that power, because we didn't mention this, but Hohenheim and Father are living Philosopher Stones.
Yeah, that's like the big reveal because it also implies that Ed is like half Philosopher's Stone, sort of, kind of. It's
Kind of,
unclear.
sort of, not really. They are essentially just regular humans,
Yeah,
um, but I think the whole deal where he was going around and planting little bits of himself to counteract the big transmutation circle around the country. Obviously, that drained his life force, and then actually taking part in the battle itself, he was expending a lot of energy. So I think the battle itself was what drained the last bit of his life in the first place.
yeah. That actually is a very nice reveal too, because it explains where he's been this entire time. Because at first you think he's just a deadbeat who's just fucking off the entire time.
Yeah,
Then you find out no, he's actually doing important shit because he knows what's going to happen.
yeah.
There's just a cool like this anime literally ties everything together.
Mm-hmm.
Because then of course like we get the basically all the loose ends get tied. Like Mustang basically becomes the new Führer and he gets his
Well,
eyes fixed.
not quite.
Well, oh yeah, there's
There is
the
an
other.
interim Führer,
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about him. Yeah,
but
he kind of appears and then doesn't.
yeah, everything gets wrapped up very, very neatly.
Yeah, and then like Ed and Al kind of go back to their main village and they're going off on their separate. They're basically going their separate ways for like the first time ever. And like Ed's gonna go learn like journey the world and learn more about history and stuff, and then Al's going to Shing to learn about Alga history.
Yeah, they're basically doing like the two sages, the whole origin story of alchemy and alchemy. They're essentially just copying that and going off in their own direction just to learn about the world. And
Yeah, it's a nice touch. Like you find out that Ling got the Philosopher's Stone, so he became the Emperor. He also he basically promised to May that he's going to fix all the bullshit going on over there, which is what she wanted.
right,
Um, also, my favorite moment is Ed's like absolutely embarrassing way of confessing his love for Winry at the end.
yeah, it's just very
He equates it to alchemy, which is like the most bizarre thing ever. But she totally buys it because she just knows him at this point.
yeah. At that point, it's just like well, shit. Like for you, that's like extremely sweet and touching. So I guess I'll just go with it.
Well, I love the fact that he flat out can't spit it out. And then when he finally does, he spits out this ridiculous like shit that to anyone not paying attention be like, what the hell does that mean? But it's like to her, she's like, okay, I get it.
Yeah,
And then of course the ending like scene of this like show is probably the most wholesome part of it.
yeah. With the how it's going through the credits and it's showing all the like photographs and stuff.
Yep. And then it cuts to the family photo at the end with the
Ed
him and
Winry's kid.
yep. And then Al and May are there and basically the family's all together. It's a really sweet ending.
Yeah.
And it's nice because it literally ends 100% closed off. Like there's nothing else that really matters after this.
Yeah, and even though we don't see it in the series, the mangaka did say that Mustang and Hawkeye did end up getting married.
Yeah, they were like the biggest like will they won't they throughout the entire series.
They never did during the series, but according to the author, they did off screen. So
Yeah. Yep. And it ends very perfectly like that. And it's like there's some people that are like, can we get a sequel? I'm like, no, it's fine. Don't
yeah,
touch it.
we don't need a sequel.
You know what happens?
Excuse me.
You know what happens when a series gets a sequel that didn't need a sequel? You get Yashahime, and I mean, I've
For
alluded
Dragon
to
Ball
it.
GT.
Yeah, but I mean that got super after, so it made up for it.
True.
Yeah, but I mean, like, FMA literally ends so perfectly, like that. There's no reason to continue it.
Yeah, it just wrapped up so neatly. Like it would just Oh God, talking too much.
I hear you.
Yeah, they would just ruin it if they tried to bring it back.
Yeah, it's kind of like Yu Yu Hakusho. That ended pretty much perfectly too.
Yeah, it's like we got just enough. It didn't need to
Yeah.
be any more.
Well, I remember because I was my co-host over on 3DO Thrack. He's watching Yu Yu Hakusho right now, and he had asked me
Oh,
like,
nice.
he asked me, is the ending good? And I told him because he had heard about the final arc being kind of meh. So I told him the ending is great. The final arc kind of sucks, but it's like the ending makes up for it.
The last episode is good.
Yeah, the legit ending of the series is great. That final arc is rough, but that's for later.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's like there's legit like no reason for FMA to continue because it's just straight up ends.
right.
And also, what would they even do? Like, there's like legit nothing left to tell.
Yeah, for real. I mean, I don't know. Maybe a movie. A movie would be okay. I just don't want another series.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what's Ed gonna do? He legit has no more alchemy, and he's
And,
older now.
I mean, I know Japan doesn't care about any of our stuff, but like, as far as English dubs go,
Well, yeah, it's like,
all the Full Metal purists are not gonna they're not gonna accept any replacements for Ed.
yeah, and unfortunately, if they did redo it, if they did anything else, they wouldn't bring Vic back, unfortunately, because of events. So
Yeah, that's so far beyond the realm of possibility. So
at this point, yeah. Yeah, and I think half the actors in this aren't even anime actors anymore.
yeah, that's fair.
At least not full time anymore. Because I know Travis Willingham's definitely not anymore.
Hmm.
Laura Bailey sporadically. I mean,
If
Justin
she's
Cook.
invested in the role.
Yeah, like Justin Cook barely does roles anymore. I don't think he's in this though. He might have like some obscure role.
Yeah. Um,
But yeah,
he'd come back for Yusuke, I'm sure.
well, I mean,
And
yeah, that's
he still does like Dende and stuff. He does Raditz in the video games and
when they remember him.
yeah,
I mean, he came back for Hatsaru and Fruit Baskets. So,
that's true.
but yeah. Oh, there was that movie for Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, the
Oh
Secret Star
yeah.
of Milo. That's like not canon at all.
Yeah, like it takes place like right after it was like right after the stuff with the first Creed.
Right. Yeah, it's just like kind of like it's like a Naruto or Dragon Ball movie. It's
Yeah.
basically just not important.
I watched it once. It wasn't bad. I
I
enjoyed it for what it was.
I think the Shambhala movie is honestly better, and that one's, but that's mostly just because of the mindfuckery in it.
Yeah, well the Shambhala one is just an extension of that first
It's the
series.
ending to
It's the proper
original.
ending.
Yeah,
Which is really I don't know. I don't want to get too much into that, but
yeah.
they do some weird stuff. Like NB's whole deal. Way different. Way
Yeah.
different, and it's really weird.
Did you ever play any of the video games?
No, I didn't.
They are they're action RPGs.
Really.
They're like the most okay anime RPGs I think I've ever played.
Hmm.
Like they're not really good, but they're not like offensively bad either. They just kind of exist.
I know in one of the manga volumes, Arakawa had written like a little like prequel chapter to it, to one of the games.
Yeah, there was two on, well, three technically, but we only got two of them over here for the PS2. There's
Yeah,
also
it
one
was
on
one
the
of those.
there's also one on the DS that I've been meaning to try and track down, but it's kind of expensive now. So
Hmm.
there's
It's
also
probably for
the
the first series anyway.
so they're from what I've read, they're based off the manga in particular,
Hmm.
but they use like the first series art style.
Interesting.
They actually it's fun. They come with two DVDs that have a couple episodes from the original series.
That's funny.
So it's like, hey, here's some official episodes from the original series that you can legally watch.
It's weird. It's hard to find that original series now too.
The only way is with the really expensive Blu-ray sets, or you can get a bootleg, which is the easier way.
Yeah. You'd
Yeah,
think the
because
companies would learn from that because you can actually get some pretty nice quality bootlegs nowadays for pretty
yeah,
cheap. So
I think I think the Blu-ray I have is a bootleg because it doesn't look exactly right, but it's so nice that it's like, yeah, it's fine.
did you ever watch the Brotherhood OVAs?
I don't think I did.
I saw them once a while ago. I tried to buy them like a year or two ago, but I fucked up and I accidentally bought the OVAs for the first series. Um,
I gotta look. The retro store nearby has a bunch of anime Blu-rays and DVDs. They have a ton of Full Metal Alchemist ones. I gotta see maybe if they're in there.
yeah, because there was one that had it was this whole thing about this dude who had done human transmutation. There was another one that was all about Izumi Curtis's training in the Braze Mountains
Hmm.
when she was doing her alchemy training with her master and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's four of them, but they were pretty good. I liked them.
Okay. I'll have to look into those.
Yeah,
There was
it's been a long time since I've seen them, but
there was also the live action adaptation, which I've heard mixed things on.
I saw like the first half of the first one. Um, I would have watched the whole thing, but I think at the time, like Netflix was being weird about the dub for it.
Oh, it's dubbed.
Kind of at the time. I don't know what the deal was with it was, but like there technically was one, but it was I don't remember exactly what was it up with it, but it was a really weird structure.
Huh.
Like it was, but it wasn't.
Interesting.
They might have fixed it by now, but this is like right when the first one came out. There's like three of them now, isn't there?
There's definitely two. I'm not sure about three. I've never seen them, so
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we'll end up covering them at some point.
yeah, if they're still available, because Netflix like lost all the Full Metal stuff.
Well, I think those are Netflix movies. I could be mistaken, but I think they are.
I'll have to look into it. Um, but yeah. So I mean, we covered it for the most part. That was a very loose adaptation, well, a loose retrospective, because even at 64 episode one is kind of hard to cover off the top.
Well, I mean, it's a very dense show. There's so much going on at all times. Every episode matters. You know.
Yeah, like when we said two filler episodes, and even the two filler episodes are pretty dense.
Yeah, like literally, that show keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time. It's really hard to cover in a reasonable amount of time. It's one of those ones where if we really wanted to touch on all the things we wanted to talk about, we'd have to like actually go through episode by episode.
Yeah, it's honestly one of those. It's an anime that 100% deserves the hype it gets, even if the fan base is a little insane. But it's also one of those ones that I feel like is intimidating for some people to start,
Yeah, for sure.
just because of the amount of hype behind it.
Yeah, I get that.
I definitely say though, if you're coming into it now, watch Brotherhood because you can find Brotherhood pretty much everywhere. You can find it on Hulu. You can find it on Crunchyroll. I think it's still on HBO. Well, actually, no, it's Max now, so it's probably not anymore.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
It's on Hulu though. So
Um,
actually, I think
actually,
it's on Disney Plus now too. I believe.
I think Disney Plus, they just started like integrating that. I think what it is you can only watch Hulu stuff on Disney Plus if you have a Hulu account.
Okay, okay, that makes more sense.
It's like a bundle kind of thing, which I mean, it would make more sense if you could do more with it. But
They're
like,
probably gonna do a merger at some point and just merge them together. But
we'll see. It
yeah,
would be nice if they did something like that because like when I saw that they were doing that, I was like, oh shit, well maybe I could actually download episodes of Bleach and watch Bleach again. But like all the episodes I couldn't download on Hulu, I still can't download on Disney. So it's like,
yeah,
what's the point? Like I might as well just use Hulu.
yeah. Honestly, thankfully, FMAB brother. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood is thankfully a lot easier to find. The Blu-rays aren't that expensive. I mean, they're Aniplex, so you're going to be paying probably 50 a piece, but at least they're easy to find.
Well, I got my DVD sets pretty cheap, actually. If they are Blu-rays, they are the best looking fucking Blu-rays at Blu-rays bootlegs I've ever seen in my life. Like,
Yeah, there's not as many bootlegs of Brotherhood, thankfully. Um, prices might have gone down. I know they shift around because Aniplex stuff is just annoyingly expensive, but
yeah, for
um,
real.
it's a shame that Crunchyroll doesn't technically have the license anymore because that's kind of one of the reasons why it's so hard to find nowadays.
Who does have it right now?
Aniplex.
But, huh?
So Aniplex always had it. They just licensed the dub out to Funny.
Okay,
It's kind of like how Aniplex has the Kaguya-sama license, but they've they outsourced the dub to like Crunchyroll.
gotcha.
Aniplex does that a lot. Unfortunately, Aniplex also doesn't like to release shit like
So
ever,
annoying. So annoying.
which is annoying because they're both owned by Sony. That's why I don't get it.
I don't know.
But
Companies are weird.
yeah, so I definitely highly recommend the anime. I'd also recommend the manga if you can find it. The 3-in-1s aren't too expensive. They're just never in print.
Yeah, and they got the really nice new like collector's hardcover.
Yeah, that's probably the way to go now if you're collecting the manga because those are probably the easiest to find.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, the 3-in-1s are okay though too. This never got a Viz big, right?
No.
No.
But yeah, I definitely say Brotherhood over the original. I understand if you grew up with the original and that's your favorite, that's fine. But Brotherhood is definitely the superior story.
Yeah, it's
Um,
also just more concise.
yeah, it's so tidy. It's so neat. It just comes together so well.
Yeah, but yeah, this one wasn't too long, but not too short either. So we did pretty good. But once again, guys, thanks for joining us on Geek Addicts. Geek Addicts can be found on all the major podcasting platforms in the GNC podcast feed. You can now find the episodes on YouTube. And yeah, you can find all of our links at linktree/the Barbecue Games, and you can come join the GNC podcast Discord server if you'd like. And you can talk all things GNC, 3DO, and Geek Addicts, or talk anime gaming, or just whatever. But until next time, guys, we will see you all later.
Have a good one.